Mano vardas Oliveris, ashkivenu Barcelonoje, ashesu mokitojas Barcelonoje, kalbu angliškai, hispaniškai, ne kalbu litviškai. Mano brolis yra actores, mano brolis yra Karolis, mano brolis gyveni Angloje, jis patinka futbolas, suris yra geltonas, bananas yra geltonas. Man patinka bananas, aš valgau bananas, kiek diena aš valgau bananas. Šiandien yra šeštadienis, rytoj yra sektadienis. 3 savaites, 30 valandų išmokau lietuvių kalbos. Manau, ka lietuvių kalbos yra sunki. Studijava jau visas gramatikas, kurios man atrodo reikalingos dabar praktikuosiuosi. Sveiki! Lietuvių kalbos išmokau vieną mėnesį. Manau, kad tai įdomu kalba. Mano kolegos yra Jonas ir Simonas. Man jie patinka. Esu laimingas su mano darbo. Mano darbas sunkus ir varginantis, bet man tai patinka. Dirbo 5 valandas per diena, šeštadienį ar sekmadienį nedirbo. Aš gyvenu Barcelonoje, Ispanijoje. Tai didelis, įdomus miestas ir man tai patinka. Tačiau jis yra šiek tiek brangus. Man patinka gyventi savo mieste. Man patinka gyvenimo būdas ir miestas yra gražus. Mano mėgstamiausias dalis yra parkas. Nenorėčiau gyventi kitame mieste, nors galbūt Paryžiuje, Prancūzijoje, lankiausi 5 kartus.
So even though I didn't learn it, I did learn Lithuanian for a month. Now obviously I didn't learn the entire language, or even enough to be fluent, but I did study an hour a day, sometimes 2, and after 50 hours I got to about pre-intermediate, which I'm quite happy with. With active study you can certainly achieve something effective in a short time. Besides, you wouldn't want to learn it in a month. What would that mean? That, what, you stop after a month? No, you do it, then you'd want to continue in some form. So what have I specifically learnt? Well, I focus on present simple sentences and questions. I can talk about my job, sport, family, food, where I live, all in a superficial but communicative way. I can understand questions like where do you work, who do you work with, do you like your job, and respond. I can reproduce a lot of what I've learnt without pause. This kind of level is what many speakers confidently have of their second language, which is quite sufficient and useful. True learning for me is memorizing the words till you can reproduce them easily. You don't need to do that with all words, as not all words are equal and some are far more common, like eat, money, happy. Do it with the most frequent words, then once you're going, you pick up others. Base your study on the most frequent words, the most frequent 30 verbs, 30 adjectives, and a couple of 100 nouns or so, but look at them well. I avoid long lists. Learning lots of words is hard, so I keep to small groups of 3 or 5 in different topics you can later add to. 3 fruit, 3 sports, 3 drinks, 3 verbs, 3 adjectives. This is more manageable at the beginning. Combine the words to form simple sentences. This is often essential as many languages require conjugation, changing the verbs slightly depending on if it's me or you or he or she or if it's in the past or the future, so it's no good memorizing verbs on their own as they'll likely change when used, and your list of verbs will end up being useless. It serves little purpose to see words isolated. You need to see them in action using short examples. Say out loud in the language you're learning, I eat oranges, I eat bananas, I eat apples. I play football, I play tennis, I play basketball. Practice negatives. I don't eat apples, I don't play tennis. Change to you. You eat bananas, you don't play basketball. Develop this into call and response drills with questions. Do you play tennis? I don't play tennis. Do you eat fruit? Yes, I eat apples. Introduce the third person. He eats, she doesn't play. Does he drink water? You internalize the words by spending more time using them. Add new vocabulary with each class bit by bit. There are variations and expansions on this method, all based around the same idea. It's these core structures that are how you should get started. Think of it like the drills you would do in training for a sport. You wouldn't just expect to play a game immediately, you'd break the sport down into its constituent parts, like serving in tennis over and over again. Eventually you would move from the dynamic drills to fuller conversations. I did 50 hours in about a month and a half. This is quite intense, but I think it's doable to study for 3 hours a week. You could do 50 then in less than 4 months. If it sounds like a lot, believe me, 1 month of intensive learning for 50 hours is far more satisfying than 50 hours of meme videos. And I do like meme videos. Besides, even though I studied for 50 hours, really a big chunk was practice and I didn't learn anything new as much, especially in the last 10 hours or so. There's plenty I've studied which I can't produce now, like months are a weak point, which I'd get eventually. This is key. Repetition will result in memorization. Some words you may remember quickly because they're easy or you like them, but a lot of the time you must look at a word 20, 30 or 40 times to remember. You don't have to think hard and give yourself a headache in order to memorize, but keep repeating the drills and you'll start to recognize the words and patterns, and then they'll go in. This is when you've truly learned. Review is an extension of repetition. Go over previous classes and content to solidify your knowledge. Just having a quick 5 or 10 minute look at the beginning of a class to remind yourself of what you studied and keep it fresh. I don't expect to be able to recount the entire class, but if the class was about using when and I ask when do you play tennis, I expect myself to reply something like, I play tennis on Mondays. This logical response proves that I've truly got this particular aspect of the language. I've used Google Translate for nearly all of my learning, which, whatever you may think, is fantastic for these simple sentences. You can even listen to what you translated. Compared to other materials which are either too easy or too difficult, Google Translate provides me exactly what I need. While you're studying, be there, focused and in the moment of that hour. Don't passively read the words, make an effort and consciously try to learn. Speaking doesn't mean chatting. Perhaps you want to be able to meet someone and chat away. It is possible, but build up to it. Long before you can use these exercises to speak in a controlled way, out loud from what you read or answering simple questions. What colour is your phone is a far easier question than how's your job going, which has more variables. Chatting means you want to be spontaneous, but it's not easy to be spontaneous. Even in your native language, it's not that straightforward to keep a conversation going. You need common ground and prompts. Keep it simple. I probably only know about 20 verbs in Lithuanian, but I know them well. Avoid variety and too much information. If you have a strong base, later aspects are easier than if you move on too quickly. Once you're comfortable with what you know, new words and grammar slot in. Pay attention to difficult concepts. For English speakers, conjugation, which is changing the verb slightly that I mentioned, is tricky and requires significantly more time than other grammar. It should be explained in your native language with examples. When you understand the concept, the why, learning gets easier. Part of the battle is teaching yourself how your own language is structured as much as learning the new one, and as you go you acquire an understanding of your own language. It doesn't have to be thorough, but understanding verbs, adjectives, nouns, and the most common tenses helps a lot. If you get bored after the initial novelty, switch to something else like songs or videos to take a break. Find the lyrics, but be careful as even though this can be enjoyable, it's not as productive. Lyrics can often be abstract, whereas normal conversation is not, so don't let it take up too much of your time, and try to leave it till 40 or 50 hours. Films especially should be left a lot longer, like 100 hours in or more. Better is to look on YouTube for short content that you've studied, like simple vocabulary and grammar to practice the actual action of listening. Music or films you can come to when you're comfortable with the basics and know what you're doing with the language. Learning anything is like getting a train going. At the beginning it's slow to engage the different mechanisms, but once you speed up, you're off. You can read or have conversations and pick up new words and even patterns. Difficult concepts get easier over time. Many things I've learnt, like my example of conjugation, felt so confusing at the beginning years ago, and now they make so much sense that I don't understand how I couldn't get them. There are a few other things I haven't mentioned, but this should get you started. It's not magic. You still need to put in the legwork, but this method streamlines the process in a more efficient manner. I would probably arrange a language exchange with a Lithuanian speaker in a prepared way with specific topics. I'll put some in the description. If you do this, try to think of some questions you could ask beforehand. It's important to maximize the time you have with the other person. I'd also do more low-level readings, as it's a case of translating any new vocabulary when you come across it, which sink in and often can later be recalled when you need them. I'm not sure how this works. I guess the human memory is special like that. All skills, if they're worth it, need to be maintained long-term if they should be usable. Remember, there is no end apart from using it on a regular basis. It's quite grounding having an interest like this. Purpose is important in life, and this is one. Thanks for listening.